I'm Timothy Vigil, and this is Just Another Word podcast, the Word of the Day podcast for storytellers. J is for joy. Joy is the serious business of heaven. C.S. Lewis. In casual conversation, we commonly treat joy and happiness like interchangeable synonyms. We use them to describe anything from a good cup of coffee to the birth of a child. But there's a distinction here, something that we need to look at the words deeper to understand. See, using them interchangeably as a storyteller is a missed opportunity. So to understand joy, let's look past the smile and into the foundations of a person. The most effective way to distinguish between these two words is by looking at their source. Happiness is a reaction. It's a chemical response to external stimuli. You're happy because the sun's out, or because you got a promotion, or because the protagonist of your favorite book finally escaped the dungeon. It's a surface-level emotion. It's subject to the whims of the day because it's a reaction. It's inherently fleeting. When circumstances change, happiness often goes with it. Joy is something deeper. It's a state of mind that one works towards. It's not just a reaction to what's happening to you. It's reflection of what is happening within you. It's based on bigger things, on purpose, on conviction, on love. Happiness is a flicker, but joy is a resonance. See, at its foundation, we could describe happiness as circumstantial, but joy is purpose-driven. Happiness is short-lived, joy is abiding. Happiness is easily taken away by bad news, but joy is resilient. An understanding of how these words are different can be looked at the way that there is possibility for joy even in sadness. We, as people, can often fall into the trap of thinking emotions are mutually exclusive, that a character is either in the light or in the dark. But joy is a unique emotion because it's not the opposite of sadness. See, joy can often be its most visible when it's juxtaposed against grief. I remember when my father died in 2021, and I was so sad, incredibly distraught at the time. But that week after my dad died, between his death and his funeral service, was one of the most joyous I've ever experienced. It was an odd feeling. Family came into town who I hadn't seen in a long time, and they told me stories about my father that I had never heard before. Things about his childhood, things about years spent before I was ever born, or things that happened while I was too busy growing up and having a life. I got to experience my father from a perspective that I never had before. I remember sitting at a table with my sister late at night the day after my father died, and while we were sitting there, we were talking about things that we remembered from our childhood. And even in that moment, shared experiences we had, a new light was shed upon them because I had never really understood her experience of my father. I'd only really experienced my own. My grief was extreme. My sadness was palpable. But I remember the joy of those days. And this is something that we can take and we can put into our writing, understanding that these moments of grief, these moments of loss, can be incredibly powerful, joyful moments. Think of a character who lost everything in a revolution. They're exhausted, grieving, and objectively unhappy. Yet, a few hours later, they're sitting around a campfire with a few other survivors. They're sharing a meager meal and realizing that they're still fighting for what's right. They may have joy in that moment, but it doesn't take away their heartache in their loss. It's not the absence of suffering. It's a recognition that there's still meaning within that suffering. My dad died, and that was unhappy, but I still had family, connection, and love, and that was still in me, and I got to learn how much of that came from my father and how much more there was still to experience even though he was gone. The difference between happiness and joy is that meaning, and that is what we need to put into our stories if we want them to have true emotional resonance. Telling a story about how your character got happy is going to have some impact, but showing them how they found joy, that's going to be so powerful. See, when you're building a character, you need to ask yourself, what is their baseline? Are they the fragile protagonist? A character who relies entirely on happiness is fragile. The moment the plot takes a turn for the worse, they crumble because their emotional source has been cut off. This can be a great starting point for a character arc, moving them from the hunt for happy to the discovery of joy. But if that character remains in that cycle, that could also work. If you understand that difference and you keep putting them in situations and they're not growing, that can be resonant with a character as well. We could also think of someone as the unshakable character. See, we see this often in a mentor figure or a sidekick who has already gone through the suffering. They're not smiling all the time, but they have a steady, incandescent quality because they're anchored by something deeper than the current conflict. This can be your main character too. Maybe they're going through a horrible experience in the moment, but they're remembering something that anchors them with joy. They are recognizing their purpose and moving forward, not letting the happiness take them down or the unhappiness take them down. And we can use joy at different points in the story, but it's really powerful at the end. We think of happy endings. We've been told about this. They lived happily ever after is the quintessential storybook fairy tale ending. But I think in modern storytelling, we recognize that this can feel cheap if the cost of the journey was high. But joy can feel more earned. Maybe the hero doesn't get exactly what they wanted, but they might find a sense of joyful purpose in the aftermath that creates a resolution that resonates much longer with the reader. I often think of the end of the inheritance cycle. Aragon wants to be with this elf who he's fallen in love with, but he knows for a long time that at the end of this conflict, he's going to leave. He's not going to get what he wants. And when that finally happens at the end, it feels hard for the reader. But you realize that he has joy because he has a new purpose. It's not just about him. It's about creating a world that is going to be better for everyone. He didn't get what he wanted, but he got what he needed. He got a purpose that was bigger than him. See, joy is the steady pulse that continues even when the surface of the water is choppy and cold. As storytellers, we don't want to settle for the easy smile of happiness. We want to dig deeper and find the things in our characters, in their past circumstances, in their convictions, and connect that to create a joy so profound it can survive the darkest chapters of their story. And maybe they go through something deeply horrible that challenges their joy. Maybe they even crumble, and that joy isn't enough. But just going, oh, this sad thing happened, and they give up, and they quit, doesn't give us the full depth, the full range of emotion. Dig into that joy. What really does this character need? And that is often the difference between happiness and joy. What a character wants versus what they need. Make sure you're digging into that need and finding the joy behind and inside of your characters. You have been listening to Just Another Word podcast with your host, Timothy Vigil. For more information, go to timothywigil.com.